It was the day the blind king stood at the edge of the village well, his face to the sun, and nobody dared to speak. We all stood there, frozen, waiting for what would happen next. My name is Amadi, and I was just a young boy back then. Our king, once the strongest and wisest in the land, had lost his sight many years ago. It started slowly. He would bump into things, then squint at the sun, and finally, one morning, he just couldn't see at all. The blindness made the king angry. He stopped trusting his advisors, his people, even his family. But he never gave up hope that one day his sight would return. He would say, "The sun will come through my eyes again." He believed it so much that we all started to believe it too. One day, a stranger came to the village. He said he was a healer. He looked nothing like one, but a dusty traveler with a rough voice and tattered clothes. But the king called him to the palace. "Can you give me my sight back?" the king asked. The stranger was quiet for a moment, then said, "Yes, but first, you must do something you fear the most." The king, proud and stubborn, agreed without asking what the task would be. The next morning, the whole village gathered around the well. The stranger led the king to its edge. He whispered something in the king's ear, and the king's face grew pale. Then, without warning, the king threw off his royal robes, stepped onto the well's ledge, and stood there, balancing on the thin stone edge. The crowd gasped. Some called out, begging him to stop. But the king stood firm. I was so scared, I couldn't even blink. The stranger told the king, "If you trust your people and yourself, jump into the well. Let go of your fear. Only then will you see again." Nobody believed he would do it. But then the king smiled a smile none of us had seen in years. And without hesitation, he stepped off the ledge and disappeared into the darkness of the well. For a moment, there was silence. Then we heard a splash, followed by a cheer. The king had fallen into the water safely. The stranger pulled him up, soaking wet but laughing like a child. When the king came out, he stood there, dripping and smiling. And then, he opened his eyes. He looked around at the people, the trees, the sky, and for the first time in years, he could see. That day, I learned that fear can blind us just as much as darkness can. The king's sight wasn't just restored to his eyes, but to his heart. He saw us, the people, his family, his kingdom, with new eyes. And from that day forward, he ruled with kindness and wisdom. As I grew older, I never forgot that day by the well. And whenever I feel lost or afraid, I think of the blind king, standing on the edge, trusting the unknown. Sometimes we must take that step to see clearly again. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and comment where you're watching from for part 2.